their futures. Soldiers speak out. 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 Soldiers speak out.
Welcome to the Veterans Hour, a monthly program from Veterans for Peace, Chapter 109, the Rachel Corrie chapter in Olympia, Washington. Tonight we have a very special topic. It's very fresh on our minds, and that is on getting VA benefits in 2012. And this is so fresh, one of our guests tonight, Mark, and I were at Coffee Strong, where we volunteer on Fridays from 10 to 2, and we bring fresh conversation to that. And one of the things that we want to do is just really have a chat on the things that we've learned. Our panel tonight is Lena Swanson, who is a retired benefits specialist, advocate for over 30 years, and actually responsible for us being Fridays, probably for the rest of our given life, at Coffee Strong. She's trained us to be independent VA claims agents. And tonight, you know, we want to relate our experiences as we chat together and focus on the training, particularly in veterans law and procedures, things that we've learned in the last 2 years, has it been, Mark, since we've been there now? And there's a number of things that we've learned, and even today, new things as we come across trying to help veterans and active duty personnel receive their benefits. Lena, tell us a little bit about VA benefits and this whole process that we're involved with.
Well, as I've, over the years, what I've tried to describe to the veteran is that a service-related disability is any physical or mental condition incurred while on active duty or aggravated by active duty that may have lasting effects. The viewing audience should bear that in mind. I also want to relate how burdened the VA system is right now. It is so overwhelmed and backlogged with claims, it is ground virtually to a halt. I was amazed to learn that it's like 41 days or 31 days, being 4 years to process an appeal. The claims are taking so long. One young man that I know, his baby's almost a year old, and he still hasn't picked up the dependent allowance for it. It's been there sitting on somebody's desk. He called, and they said it takes about 11 months to add a dependent onto your compensation. That is tragic, because 10 years ago, if you put your paperwork in on the 15th of the month, it wouldn't come in on that check, but it would be on the next month's check. So
and now 1.3 million claims have been filed just 2011.
Well, according to Ken Carpenter, who is a member of the National Association of Veterans Advocates, he says there's almost 1 million claims pending appeal in Washington, D.C. before the Board of Veterans Appeals.
And I understand that the appeals process can string on for 3.5 years.
Like 31 days being 4 years.
Oh my.
Now, at the Board of Veterans Appeals, there are 65 administrative law judges, and each law judge has 4 attorneys, and each attorney has his own staff. And they are so backlogged. There's no way in the world they're going to get those claims processed properly. What I'm being told is that 1 out of every 4 VA disability claims the VA has made a major error in it. And if that's the case, the case will remain open. The error may have occurred 20 years ago, but if the veterans advocate finds that error and brings that to the attention of the VA, that benefit, if granted, goes all the way back those 20 years, and that veteran gets all of it.
And just to add to that, when you look at the appeals process, we have one now. It's been almost 18 months since we put it in. This is at the regional office, even before you get to, to the next levels. We're told that they're working on cases back to 2008. So it's a long process.
Well, and the materials that you use to show how we could find these clear and unmistakable errors are documents that we have, and our viewing audience can see the federal veterans laws, rules, and regulations that we have on the table here. And that's about 2,000 pages worth
Correct.
of material.
Plus or minus.
And then to even understand that, there's the Veterans Benefit Manual. Clearly, this is almost carry-on luggage on an airplane if you're going someplace with that. But that comes out every year.
Yeah, this is produced by the National Veterans, NVLSP, National Veterans Legal Services Program. Ron Abrams and Bartlett. Two of the most brilliant attorneys I've ever encountered. And Meg Bartlett, she helps to write that. But any service organization, service officer, advocate should have that manual updated annually and know what it says. And if you're doing your job, you're tagging that manual.
Now, Lena, when we opened with our conversation, we said accredited, independent
That's correct.
VA claims agents.
Correct.
Do you want to tell our listening audience, although this is a conversation, what are we saying and what are the other options that our viewing audience might have?
The only people that an independent claims agent certified has to make application to the Veterans Administration. And if that application is accepted, then they are tested. If they pass that test, then they receive their accreditation. They can operate at the same level that any attorney. In fact, now the claimant can hire an attorney at the local level, or he can hire an independent claims agent to represent him. Once that appeal process, the notice of disagreement has been filed, he can hire Dennis or Mark to represent him throughout this whole process. The service organizations, Disabled American Veterans, VFW, they all have local chapters who have a service officer who volunteers. Each regional office in the system, there are 58 of them, has one floor that's devoted to the service organizations, and those service organization people are supposed to be professionals, professionally trained. And the volunteers out in the community send the claims into them. They're supposed to go through that claim and look it over and say, hey, wait a minute, this guy needs this, this, this. In many cases, that's not happening. They're so backlogged, they'll just package it up and ship it on into the VA incomplete. And therein hangs a lot of our troubles.
Well, and we've seen a number of people come by Coffee Strong that we've asked them, have they been assisted by someone else? And they say yes, but they can't find that person or organization, and they have time guidelines that they need to meet, and the time is running out. Matter of fact, tell us about the time guidelines.
The time guidelines for making appeals?
And claims, and
well,
just sort of, what is the time frame we're looking at?
Well, depending on what you're seeking, I mean, you can seek a claim at any time. We have Vietnam veterans who are coming in 30, 40 years after the war who are putting in claims for PTSD, Agent Orange. We have brand new vets who are coming in. They are within the first year of service. They can put a claim in, and during that first 365 days, any condition that they're diagnosed with is presumed to be service-connected. Is that correct?
Okay, you're absolutely right. It's a chronic condition. You could be, during that first 365 days after separation from the military, if you are being treated for a condition, even though it's not been diagnosed, but later on, after that year, they say, oh, he's got diabetes. That the government must assume it started on active duty. Right. So that first 365 days after discharge is very, very important to the veteran.
So if you're currently in the service and you're coming out, those are the things you need to know right now. Is make sure that you are, get checked up. You have your medical records. You bring all that with you when you put in a claim, because now's, I guess we call it the sweet time, because many things will be presumed in your favor. The longer you wait, the more difficult it is.
So now's not the time then, Mark, to forget the horrors of what you went through, and you're just trying to put it aside, because you may be losing some of the groundwork that you can have in claiming VA benefits.
And I can't speak specifically to some of the other benefits, but there are some benefits that if you don't apply during a certain time, you may not be able to get. So if you're thinking about what you want to do, you really need to look through the VA benefits. You know, we've been talking about disability benefits, but if I can digress just a moment and talk, there's a whole range of benefits that a veteran needs to consider, and I'll run through a few. We mentioned disability compensation. All veterans are eligible for health care. That's the good news. The bad news is that health care is limited, and if you're not in a priority group, you're at the bottom of the list. You may not get served.
So how do I get into a priority group?
Well, you could be an ex-POW. That's always good after the fact. If you are rated with a disability of 30% or more, you get into a priority 2 group. So there are 8 different groups. A veteran who has no disability claim or nothing in his record would be down there at number 8, and if they run out of money, they don't get served.
What about a combat veteran? Do they move up on the list some?
Not necessarily. If they get the disability, just because you're in combat, if you don't have a disability or a rating, you're not going to be in the high priority group. Whereas if you get a disability rating of more than 30%, suddenly you're number 2, and you will be served.
One of the things you need to remember to our viewing audience and gentlemen is that the health care, the people who are eligible, the health care facility has all power. They can be
They can discriminate.
They can be discreet or no discretionary.
They have discretion.
Yeah, they could be. Their decision might be different from the hospital down in San Diego. They're all powerful.
Yeah. And a few other things to think about are education benefits. We have the new GI Bill, which is very generous compared to the Vietnam-era GI Bill. Again, something that you need to go, if you're planning to pursue education, you want to follow up right after you get out of service. Classic benefit is a guaranteed home loan. There are also benefits for survivors, widows and orphans of service-connected veterans. Veterans who die from their conditions are eligible for a variety of benefits. There's far too many of them for us to go through in the program, but I would encourage our listeners who are interested in seeing what benefits are available that they go to the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs website, which is www.va.gov, and there's a tab that says Veteran Services. If you click on that, there's a long list of it. There's also a booklet, which is updated every year, that says these are the benefits you're eligible for. Most of what we have been doing has been disability compensation. We're going to be spending a lot of time on that. But just because we're talking about that particular area doesn't mean there aren't other benefits you would want to consider.
One thing you want to remember is that on the grounds of every 2- and 4-year college in the United States, there should be a veterans educational representative. And if you're planning on going to college, when you get out of service, you go find that representative. Mm-hmm. They'll tell you what kind of hoops you have to jump through and what benefits that particular college may offer to veterans. And Dennis, now you're going to be putting a list of references material on the screen.
Yes, and those will be on the screen. So as we talk about these documents, we'll have that on the screen for our viewing audience.
Okay.
I'm just wondering what type of documents people should collect. In our viewing audience, we have active duty people, we have recently discharged. I talked to a person just 4 days from being in combat in Afghanistan, and now he was home looking for help and benefits and wondering which direction and wanting to go to college and just a variety of baggage that he was bringing with him. But there are some things that our veterans should have, and I'm just going to mention them, and then maybe you could, since this is a conversation, talk about it. One is all discharge documents from all enlistments showing the character of the discharge, which we call the DD-214. Now, within that statement, all enlistments sometimes could catch us by surprise because there's the character of that discharge can vary between the enlistments. Tell us about, I don't have a DD-214, or I had a good enlistment the first time, but the second one I had a little bit of a problem.
Well, let's talk about the DD-214, which is essentially, this is your record of service. It's a summary of your service, and it's the basic document you need. It's like an entry document. Without that, you're not going to go very far. If you don't have, you were given one at discharge, but sometimes veterans lose them. If you don't have one, you can get that. And in fact, you can get it with other variety of records. And again, that's we'll put a reference on the screen. You can go to the National Archives. There's a tab for looking up military records, and that brings up the form and shows you how to apply. The thing about enlistments is if you're in the military you sign up, you're in for 8 years. And then you decide, I like this, I want to make a career of it. You sign up for another period. So the first time you're discharged, you get a DD-214. You have an honorable discharge. You're in your second term and something happens and it turns out they decide they don't want you and they separate you from the service with a less than honorable discharge. Does that mean you're not eligible for benefits? And the answer, I think, is no, you are eligible because you have an 8 years service with honorable discharge. Is that correct?
Basically, you have lost your educational benefits.
Even if you have the honorable?
Even with the prior honorable coming out. But on the first, the danger comes in is when these guys re-enlist early. In other words, you signed up for 8 years, but you go in at 6 years and said, I want to re-up. So he's got a 2-year overlap into this new enlistment. And he gets into trouble during that overlap period, that 2-year period. He's lost all benefits because it's all bad. Yeah. But the other than honorable, the undesirable, and the bad conduct discharges would totally eliminate educational benefits as we know them today. And however, under the original discharge, if he goes and gets service connected for a disability based during that period of time, gets rated 30% or more, he's entitled to apply for that vocational rehabilitation program.
Not education, but rehab.
Oh, yeah, it is education.
But it's not the GI Bill?
No, it's not the GI Bill, but they'll pay your tuition, they'll buy your books, and give you a monthly allotment. It's a 4-year, and the beautiful thing about voc rehab, and not well known, is that at the end of that 45 months or whatever it is they allot you, if you have not been successful in that particular period, that study, they can flip that over and give you another 45 months and let you start over.
And they have good career counseling and
Very
placement services, whereas many times in the 4-year degree program, they don't. And
that's really true. That's really true.
And I've encouraged some of our newer vets that come back and they're not sure what they want to do. We've talked with a vet today that did not want to claim PTSD because he wanted to get some training, didn't want it on his record. He wanted to possibly go into federal service. Therefore, I was suggesting he look at this vocational rehab program because they do have the placement and the testing, and some aren't ready to pursue being on the battlefield 4 days later in the classroom. And that can be a challenge.
It really is. The DD-214 is like the basic document, but then from there, you need additional documents.
Yes, and in one we say, are you married? And why is marriage certificate a necessary document?
If you're rated at 30% by the VA
or
more by the Veterans Administration, then you are entitled to a dependent allowance. That means for your wife, your children,
dependent parents?
Dependent parents, if they meet the income criteria, by the way. But that's what's so important about the clarity and the getting those documents in all at once.
So you're talking about a marriage license, you're talking about birth certificates, anything that documents your relationship with a potential benefit.
Yeah, and this, remember, is tax-free benefit funds.
Correct.
So that becomes a very important thing. We're looking at sometimes $113 or more.
Oh, for the additional stipend.
For the additional stipend. The person says, I'm divorced. Now I'm remarried. Now what do they need to have?
They would need to have a record of the divorce. They need a copy of the divorce decree.
Do they need the original marriage certificate?
No. Now, if the VA, now there was a time when the VA required certified copies of everything, but then they slacked off trying to gain time. But if the VA has any doubt whatsoever about the authenticity of the marriage certificate, they can demand the original. In the meantime, they're accepting copies of the marriage certificates and divorce decrees birth certificates and this type of thing. But at any given time, they can come back and say, we want to see the certified copies.
Okay. Now, we have a veteran who received benefits, married, now has his wife. The wife came with 2 children from a prior marriage. Can this veteran claim these stepchildren as children as far as VA benefits
If
go?
they are in his home.
They are in
he
his
is
home.
providing more than 50% of their care.
Does he officially have to adopt them?
No,
Yeah.
he doesn't. He just has to show that they're in his home. He's claiming them as dependents on his IRS or whatever.
That veteran's financially responsible for the
Right.
children.
So VA would say, show us that you're financially responsible. They would show tax return.
I've never heard them ask that. I haven't heard them ask that.
Okay.
If you come in and say, I've married a woman, and I've got custody, she's got custody of her children, here are their birth certificates, I'd like to add them on to I'm claiming them as dependents.
And then when they have their own child by that marriage, and there's, say, 3, now there are 3 dependents, the
Plus
wife, and so all those are 4 dependents then that receive additional compensation for whatever that would be. Okay. One of the other statements that we said that veterans should come in, when we ask them to come in to Coffee Strong on Fridays from 10 to 2, bring some documents with you. And those are some of the documents we're after. But we also said buddy statements. What is a buddy statement?
A buddy statement can be from the wife, from the members of the family, or someone who served with you. That buddy statement should not give a medical opinion. They can talk about observations. They can talk about what you said, what the veteran said to him. That's very important, especially if that statement is from a buddy who he served with, and he talked to him sometime during that period of time that the incident occurred.
They were there with him and observed it.
And one of the problems with combat veterans is something happens, it doesn't get recorded. So I say, I was hit by an IED. Well, there's no record of this. How would anyone know? You have a statement from...
You don't have to have a buddy statement. That's where the law comes in. And that's where you quote the law about the, what is it? The
benefit of the doubt.
No, not the benefit of the doubt, the combat.
Oh, the combat infantry badge or the CAB as well.
If he's got a combat infantryman's badge, they have to take his word for it.
Okay. But say I'm a clerk and we took incoming and something happened and that, I don't have a record of that.
If your unit is entitled to a combat ribbon, then you are entitled to the combat ribbon. But if that's the case, if you were off station or whatever and somebody saw that, you very well, it doesn't hurt. A buddy statement never hurts a case.
And you also mentioned buddy statements from family and people who knew you. It's particularly useful if someone knew you before you were in service.
Yes,
and now they know you after service. I knew him before he went in the service, and he was like this.
And even when he was deployed, here's, or she, what they were saying to me via Skype, via email, what they were saying during that deployment, and when they came back, the difference that they observed.
Right. Well, they used to laugh before they went in. They don't laugh anymore. I mean, that's...
Well, the spousal statement, the family statement, the friend statement should, if they're going to talk about observations, the mood swings, the personality change, the social isolation, the short fuse on the temper, the dislike of authority. They don't like being told what to do. They prefer to be alone.
I'm afraid to sleep with my husband because he has nightmares.
And he fights at night,
And these are all observations. They're not diagnoses.
Right. We're not doctors.
And the same thing, and we tell the people when they come in, we know symptoms, and we're asking you to describe some of these things on the symptoms. We're not medical doctors, so we cannot say you have and then put the label on it, PTSD as an example.
But moving back even ahead of buddy statements is if there are records of things that happened that can document that.
The ship's logs.
So if you got a sick call, somebody went in because they took shrapnel. Somebody went in because they got dysentery while they were in the military. That sort of thing should be on your medical record.
Well, now dysentery could be an acute condition, not with no permanent residuals. So that would not be considered. But that ship that went grounded, was it 2,000 feet off of the coast?
Off the coast in Vietnam.
And that is an area that would be worthy of appeal because that's the veteran now has some of those symptoms.
And they'd be in the record there. The other thing we noticed, there was a former Vietnam veteran from a Navy person. He found the ship's log, and it listed the 3 people that were killed that were closest to him on the same deck, and it showed the picture of the blast of the North Vietnamese artillery that blasted through there.
Wow.
And not only was he telling about the loss of the 3 people who were his close friends, there in the write-up on the ship's logs were the names of the people. That becomes very important documentation. So, you know, we talked about buddy statements.
How long had you talked to this man before he got...
6 months.
Yeah, before he began to open up. Trust is something that is earned. When a veteran comes to you, they've come to you because somebody has referred them to you, said you can trust him. Frequently, we have to earn that trust. They just won't open up
Well, and sometimes it just takes a little while, and we have a thing which is called a head-to-toe intake form, where we literally try to cover everything possible. They come in with 1 or 2 things, and by the time we get to their toes, that could be 2.5 hours later.
And the military's pulling their hair out when they see that.
And actually, I think that also brings up one of the key skills, which is listening. You know, we're not there to talk. We're there to hear. We have questions. We encourage them, but you know, we really need to get them open up as much as they can, and that's why we do the head to toe, because that's kind of puts us in a neutral zone where we're just going through a checklist, just to get a sense. So they don't really have to think about, you know, they don't have to think about how to tell their story so much as they say yes, no. And what we find is very often as they go through it, they start remembering things little by little. We had one today where he suddenly remembered, I had this accident. I'd forgotten about that. So that's where part of that is. But it takes time to develop the case. And so when someone comes in and they want to file, it's not something, we don't necessarily just fill out paperwork and send it in. You know, we spend some time with the veteran trying to say,
and it can take several months to get that. And,
Right.
and one of those things is the service medical records, the SMRs. And if they don't have that, we can show them how to get it.
Right.
But some of them also have private medical records.
Yep.
And we need to get that, because when we say, oh, you're having troubles with your right knee, okay, but you're favoring your other knee, and so it's being aggravated type of thing. And we're seeing this in the service medical record. But some of them have private medical records that they need to get a hold of. And the latest thing that we said is, there's still something missing. And we found out the word was doctor's notes. And the doctor's notes often are far more explicit about, this is what I believe the person has. And they're making notes to themselves. But veterans can ask for doctor's notes. And that becomes very valuable in supporting a claim.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons why we want all this, stepping back to thinking about what a disability claim is. A disability claim is that you are diagnosed with a condition, and that condition can be traced back to some event that happened while you were in service, as we said, like the fellow who took the incoming on the ship, and that there is some link between the diagnosis and condition you now have and that event. So the 3 things: diagnosis, event, and nexus, we call it, between them. So,
medical continuity is what the VA calls it. Medical continuity.
So and that's why we're looking for the records. So we want to make sure that we have as much to demonstrate that.
And it's a lot easier when the person, like we mentioned, was in the service 5 days ago and now is coming in and saying, I have some problems, I've gone to the VA on the testing on getting out, they said I had this. It's a lot easier because that connection, or the nexus, as some use that term, is much shorter. Now, the person that's been out for 30 years, you know, we need to see, did you complain about this issue that clearly was an injury in the service, so that there was some connection between the present day diagnosis to the service injury.
It has to be more than that. It has to be more than that. Not only, if you wait 30 years, not only must it have been in the medical records, or unless you're a combat vet and you write a statement, this is what occurred, that there were no medical records, then you have to establish the medical continuity. I saw the doctor here, 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 and then you have to go back and pick up all those notes from the medical records.
Well, and some of these medical records are spread throughout various different VA hospitals or different private hospitals.
Well, the feds
too.
are supposed to be able to push a button and it'll bring up everywhere this guy's been treated at a federal facility.
You bring up a good point. You've got two sets of VA records. You have VA health records, which are over here, and then you have the VA claims records, which are over there. And as you said, they're almost two separate branches.
You got the paper pushers, I call them, the VA regional office over here and the VA medical facility here. East is east and west is west.
And they don't talk with each other.
No, but they have to cooperate because the paper pushers are going to send the veteran to the VA hospital for an examination, based on his claims. And then the VA hospital is supposed to examine him. Those examiners are different than the rest of the medical facility.
The one thing I think that our listening audience needs to know that if you're being seen by a person within the VA health system, being treated, that doesn't mean you're automatically going to get compensation.
Oh, no.
Like,
oh, no.
gee, I've been going for 6 months, I haven't seen a dime. Well, there's a reason, because the health system is different than the benefit section.
He didn't file.
And they didn't file, and they often don't send the paperwork over.
Well, they wouldn't. The VA hospital would have no reason to send their findings to the regional office unless there is a claim pending.
Now, if a claim is pending, the claim office will contact
the hospital and tell them.
But they also want to know, have you been treated by a VA hospital? Which ones? So they know where to.
They know that because when they push that button, those computers, it should come up on a screen. This guy was seen in North Dakota. He was seen in South Carolina. He's been seen at the Seattle. Supposed to do that, whether it happens or not. It's something else.
Well, VA healthcare system does have a good unified record system.
One of the things I want to get across is when the veteran walks into that examining room, he should look around that exam for a comp and pension exam. He should look around for his VA claims folder. That VA claims folder, the doctor who is doing the examination should have reviewed that folder before he examines that client. So if the vet does not see that claims folder, said, "Doc, have you seen my VA claims folder?
Have you reviewed it? Yeah.
Have you reviewed it?" Well, I tell you, it happens so often that and now that they're contracting these cases out to the private facility, I wonder about the ability of the VA to send that VA claims folder out to the
I don't think they send the whole claims folder.
Yeah. That's interesting because the examiner needs to see that all the service medical records. So when he bases his opinion, he'll base his opinion based on his findings and on what's in the record. And if it's not there, there's something wrong. See?
Let's circle back.
Okay.
I come in and I see an independent, accredited VA claims agent, and I know there's something wrong with me.
Okay.
What is it that I need to do to get a compensation from the VA, and how long is it going to take me?
Well, I can tell you the first thing you want to do is file an informal claim, which is simply a statement that I'm a veteran, I wish to file a claim for this, this, and this, or actually all benefits, including, but not limited to, this, this, and this. I will submit full documentation following up. And what that does, that establishes a date. So if
what kind of a date?
The date of benefits. Like today's August 31st when we're doing this show, if you file your claim today, any benefits that you're awarded begin on September 1st. If you file it tomorrow, any benefits.
And so you mentioned the length of time. So it may be 3.5 years, but you're saying, hold it just a second. If I get 50% times 3.5 years dated back to this informal claim,
you will get a big check.
And that's tax-free.
Right. We've had, I know we had one veteran who got a $40-some thousand check, another one who got a $10,000 check. So it can be significant.
One $319,000 or
and
something?
if nothing else, I mean, it gets the claim date started. Even though you filed that informal claim, you still have, I think it's up to a year to finish off, to actually say, here's all the evidence to support my claim. Yeah. So you file the informal claim.
And they will tell you in the letter coming back, here's the documents you need and here's the forms, the VA forms. Let's go a step further then. I filed it and I got 10%. Doesn't seem like much, but conditions worsened. Now am I going to have to open up a whole new claim, or I heard there's something about amending something. Is there a faster way?
No, that's not amending. If you've got service connected, say 10% for a bad knee, and that
it's
knee
worsened.
It's worsened. All you have to, you can write it on a piece of TP, as long as your Social Security number and your name is on every piece of paper. You could say, my service-connected condition has worsened. Would you please bring me in for an examination for an increase? You don't need to. When you amend the claim, you're adding a new condition.
Oh, okay. So the man saying, it's not my knee, I now have an ankle that's affected, and maybe my other knee has been aggravated because I favored that. That would be possibly amending because it's a different...
Yes, what you do, if you've got that bad knee and now your other knee is going bad, you go to a private orthopedic doctor and you say, Doc, could this possibly be, could this knee be aggravating this one? The doctor has to say, in his professional medical opinion, it's as likely as not that the service-connected left knee is aggravating the right knee condition.
Well, and we're seeing people, we see the combat infantry badge, we'll see the airborne badge, and Mark and I know from being in the service in the Vietnam era that, oh, there were things that they did, like jump out of perfectly safe helicopters and airplanes, that they hit the deck, which veterans know that means, boy, you went to the ground as quick as you could with a 100-pound pack, and they may be 120 pounds or so. So they're going to sustain injuries, and as they age, they're going to have some problems.
Correct. The VA, in some, if you, depending on the region, you know, you tell me what state you're from, and I'll tell you what kind of trouble you're going to have getting a service-connected condition like that through. But as a combat vet, and you sit down and you write a statement, I was here, and I jumped out of this helicopter. I injured my joints, but I didn't have time to stop. Now I've got here's the medical statement says I've got degenerative arthritis. You're probably going to need a medical statement that says, based upon this veteran's statement, and it's my opinion that it likely was caused by
I've
these
reviewed
jumps.
the service
Right.
medical records, and based
If
on...
he has them, he has them. I have reviewed the veteran's statement in the absence of that, because this is a
Okay.
combat vet. You got to take his word for
There
it.
you go.
It didn't have to be officially documented. So I reviewed his statement, and in my medical opinion, it's as likely as not that this arthritis that he is experiencing, and I show it by X-ray, is a direct result from the jumps he made. I'd like to, something else, you know, the divers. I didn't realize that these Navy divers that dive real deep and spend all that time in the decompression chamber or whatever it was, develop all this arthritis in their joints. I had a 40-year-old claimant, diver, that spent about 2 years altogether in his about 10-year period of time in the decompression chamber, and he had arthritis all throughout his body, and the VA denied the claims. So I went back, he came back to me, I said, is there a doctor out there at Bangor and that took care of you guys? He said, oh yeah. I said, well, go back to him and tell him what they found. And boy, did we get a scalding letter back.
From the doc?
From the doctor out at Bangor. And the guy who got his, he got 60%, I think, for his arthritis.
And actually, you bring up another interesting, good point. So you get a claim, and you put a claim in, and they come back and say no.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because the word no, a lot of people give up.
Right.
You know, and we saw people that show us your letter and you think, oh, darn. You know, there was dated type of thing. And what do you mean you gave up? Well, they had about 4 pages, and it was almost like legalese, and they just quit.
And there are time periods
And there are time periods.
Deadlines.
So let's talk about this whole appeals progress, you know, because we do our best to have a complete packet when we send off, and sometimes it's 2, 3, 6 inches thick, but the veterans that don't
Well, why don't you explain to them what a complete packet is?
Well, complete. One is that they have their applications, all the VA forms that are filled out.
That's
they have
one.
the service medical records, because
2.
we don't rely on the VA having them, even
Correct.
though they're supposed to.
Right.
Yes.
We collect them. We have the private medical records. We have
Correct.
the buddy statements. Any other documentation.
Marriage certificates, birth
all the
certificates,
documents
divorce
that are-
decrees.
everything
all
together.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want, essentially, you need to think about what it is you're applying for, what are the requirements, and then provide that information. And that's what we do, and any service officer will say, you need to have these things. So we try to get that together.
And how do I mail these documents?
You mail them certified, return receipt. You want to make sure that there is
important.
documentation.
Certified.
The VA hates that, by the way. They hate that.
But and
It's
and
worth
you
every
had
penny.
document today. You opened up and you were telling the vet, this was mailed such and such, and here's the person who received it. You know exactly when and whom, and so it's
Right.
there. But we're back to the
appeal
process, and they got no.
Okay.
If something else was missing, or here's what your options are.
No, if they've denied the claim, the veteran has 365 days. He has 1 year from the date that is stamped on that denial letter to file his appeal, called a notice of disagreement. He can file the notice of disagreement. I disagree with this finding, and here's why. I'd also like to have a
DRO?
a decision review, a decision officer review. That is somebody within their local region that is capable of totally reviewing that case and
So in
overthrowing.
that case, it'd be someone in our region. It'd be like Seattle, but those within the internet area could be whatever their regional office, Raleigh,
Correct,
or
correct.
Winston-Salem,
Phoenix,
or
Richmond.
whenever.
Well, you could be living in Virginia and your VA folder could be in Seattle.
Yes.
They won't move that folder just automatically unless you request it be folded.
So the decision review is one step.
All right, and that delays the appeal process, but because somebody independent is going to look at it and they could turn over the VA decision.
Basically, it's a second opinion by the same level that
Correct,
did
correct.
it originally.
And I don't have to provide anything additional?
No, the DRO can come, the decision review officer can ask you for more information, but that person has the authority to overturn the VA decision or to confirm it.
And this is when we would encourage our veterans to find a certified, accredited VA claims agent or
Absolutely.
a lawyer, or don't go it alone on this one.
No, never go into appeal process on your own. It's a worst case scenario. It really is.
So when you go to this decision review officer, and this decision review officer is looking at your file, and they say, yes, we think you're entitled to this, they give you your claim. That's fine.
correct.
If they say no, then they are required, and I think you ask them for in the appeal, to provide a statement of the case. Here is the law that backs up our decision, and that's especially important because you can look at this and go through that law, and that's with your advocate, with your attorney, whomever is representing you, and pick that case apart, see what their error would be.
And that's what we call the clear and unmistakable errors that
No,
we're looking for?
No.
Okay.
A clear and unmistakable error is where the VA has violated some law or did not,
all right.
or used the wrong code or something. That's a clear and unmistakable error.
Right.
But essentially, if you go through the DRO and they still say no,
Then
now-
it goes to the Board of Veterans Appeals.
and that's why you want to see the case.
Right. You want the statement of the case is a full explanation of what evidence was considered, what laws and regulations were considered in making their decisions, which would come back to you and say, okay, you've taken it I've come to Mark, I've come to Dennis, I want to take this to the Board of Veterans Appeals based on this, these findings.
And the Board of Veterans Appeals is another layer, and each layer you go up, the longer it takes.
Oh, yes. Oh,
I mean,
yes.
I am representing a veteran now who's been working on a case since 1966. 1966 was his first file. They turned him down. Over the years, he got it all the way up to 100%, but they only gave it to him back to like 2006. So he's asking.
Not when the original injury was.
Yeah, he thinks there's reason to think this should go back much farther.
Well, now see, that's the trouble that some of these veterans get into. If he was originally denied and he did not appeal
Right.
within that first year, then that claim is dead. It does.
Right.
He has to bring in new and material evidence not
And-
previously considered.
And that's what they've told him. He says, no, I didn't. He says, I filed it. So when we look at the statement of the case, they would say, here is where the case ended.
Right.
So if that's the case, that their decision may be correct, but it may be that they can't say that. We don't know until we see the
We're down to a
statement.
few minutes before
Okay.
our program ends,
Okay.
and there's some
Well,
things I
the-
really
what-
want
okay,
to
the
be
one
sure
that-
that we touch this.
All right, but
and
let me
then
give
get
me
to the
2
need for
minutes.
it.
Give me 2 minutes.
Okay, and then claims agents.
The
how does it
Board
come?
of Veterans Appeals, you have, when you get that statement of the case, it's going to have attached to it a BVA Form 9. It is the piece of paper that will push this case through to the Board of Veterans Appeals. And you have actually 60 days from the date of that statement of the case, supposedly, or whenever that decision is, to file this Form 9 or 100, or a year, whichever.
Whichever comes first.
Right. And then if the Board of Veterans Appeals upholds the local regional office, then you go to the U.S. Court of Veterans Appeals, and there comes a deadline, 120 days from the date of the BVA decision to file an appeal onto the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims, and that's 3 levels below the United States Supreme Court.
And keep in mind, suppose this system up until is non-adversarial.
Supposed to be.
But once you get to the Court of Veterans Appeals, it becomes seriously adversarial.
They have lawyers, high-powered lawyers.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, one of the things I talked about was that the increasing number of VA claims, 48% increase just this year alone, but there's only been a 5% increase in the number of claims agents trained and ready to go. How do you go about becoming an accredited independent claims agent? I mean, not everyone has Alina Swanson, you know, and we're very thankful that we do, and the people in the Pacific Northwest benefit from. But what is the process that you would do?
Actually, I mean, there are probably 3 levels of agents. I mean, one, any attorney can represent a veteran.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
If veteran service officers with accredited service organizations like VFW and American Legion and Disabled American Veterans can do it. And then there are the independents. Dennis and I are independent agents. And the way we do that is there's a form. It is the VA Form 21A, which is the application to become an accredited agent. You fill it out. It's like you can attach your resume documenting what your experience is. You want 3 letters of reference attesting to your character. Mm-hmm. That goes to the Veterans Affairs General Counsel in Washington, D.C. And when they review that, they'll determine, yes, you're qualified to do that. Once they make that determination, you have to take a test. It's a 25 multiple choice question test. It's very technical. It's basically things that you can look up in this book, but you have to know it by heart. It took me 3 times. It took Dennis, who's much smarter, 1 time. But it's
because I had Lena's instructions right away. Yes.
And in fact, as soon as after I had gone through Lena's course, I took the test and passed. So that tells you something. So that's essentially what you do. But it's essentially you're learning the basic process. You're learning the law. You're learning to understand what's needed. And it's everything from technical expertise that's in these 2 books to some of the just soft skills, how to listen. One of the things that we've done is we put together some forms, some procedures that allow us to be pretty systematic about how we do it. If you want to study for this test, there are several things you can do. The National Veterans Legal Services Program has, it's called the Basic Correspondence Training Course. It's about a 100-page little booklet. It takes all of this stuff and boils it down. It's fairly simple. It also has test questions you can work with. That's very good. Another resource that we discovered was from the Practicing Law Institute, which is they do legal continuing education. Back in May of 2011, they put on a full-day seminar for attorneys, but anyone could come in and sit through this. Dennis and I did that. And what that is, they're trying to encourage attorneys to take this case. And here I'll make a pitch. If you're an attorney and want to do pro bono work, here's a very good opportunity. If you want to find that information at the Practicing Law Institute, that's pli.edu, and you can search under Advocating for Veterans, and that will come up. So there are those resources where you can get this information.
And then you take the test and you wait.
And wait.
And wait. And 4 months later you call and they say, oh my, it's on the pile, and then they'll score it, and then they'll get a letter saying that you are recognized as an accredited, or we use the term certified sometimes, independent accredited agent.
And what that means is that you can represent any number of veterans.
Anywhere.
Actually, any individual can represent 1 veteran. The drawback is you can only do 1, and you may not fully understand the system. And going through these manuals and learning this stuff is very important. And much of this stuff I didn't know about when I started.
So what we are going to encourage then, and it may be self-serving, We volunteer about all we can do because it's not just a Friday 10 to 2. When we go home, we have all the cases to prepare, we have the telephone calls, but there is a need. And so I would tell our listening audience as we wrap up, if you want to help a vet today, one of the greatest things that you could do, in my opinion, is to become an accredited independent VA claims agent. And if you have issues that you think are compensable items, contact us. You can drop in at Coffee Strong, which is on exit 122 on Highway 5 in Washington, but there's other places that you can contact us. And we want to thank Veterans for Peace, Chapter 109, the Rachel Corrie chapter in Olympia, for sponsoring us and being the driving force for us getting behind this, and for Lena Swanson, who's there Fridays, volunteering, driving the distance to come in to help. So we want to thank our viewing audience as we had our chat together about Veterans Benefit Assistance. We've only tapped the source. There's 4,000 more pages to go through that we could probably talk well into the next 3 or 4 shows. But thank you for watching the Veterans Hour. Hello, I'm Dennis Mills. I'm a veteran, and I work with counseling veterans.
I'm Mark Fleming, also a veteran, and I also work counseling veterans.
And we would like to tell our viewing audience, particularly those of you who are active duty or near to becoming a veteran, on Veterans Benefit Assistance.
Yes, Dennis and I are at Coffee Strong outside the gates of Fort Lewis every Friday, and we're available from 10 to 2 to assist you in understanding the VA system, learning about the benefits you have available, how to access them, how to make claims. If you have a pending claim, we can assist you with that. Or if you're in active duty, just thinking about what you may need or be eligible for, we can provide you with that information.
We encourage you to come Fridays at Coffee Strong. That's just off of exit 122 near Lakewood, literally at the gates of Fort Lewis. To come with your DD 214 and the military records that you have, and we can assist you in getting the benefits that you deserve for the service that you provided.
We're learning more as we go, as we talk with veterans and we talk with active duty. So every time we meet with someone, we learn something new, and along the way we're able to help you apply for those benefits.
You deserve the benefits that you've earned, so come in to Coffee Strong on Fridays 10 to 2.
Soldiers speak out. We can tell the truth of what we've seen. We are not liars. Soldiers speak out. We have a duty to all children and to their future.